So welcome to Accessible Web Design Tips for the Classroom.
By Claire Abelson and Sophie Ritter. Project overview. So for our project, we were working to create a fully accessible website surrounding the HWS main stage production of Tone a Blind Eye. Tone a Blind Eye is a production that is completely based online. It is a series of monologues that are all housed on this website we created. So we wanted it to be as accessible as possible for all audiences, since it was in a virtual platform as opposed to being a live performance. As a part of our work on the accessibility design team, we helped with the creation of auditory descriptions and closed captioning for all of the digital performances. And our main goal overall was to close the accessibility gap that exists by investigating digital accessibility aids specifically for theater performances for people with disabilities.
So one of the most important things that we learned and want to emphasize from this entire project is that accessibility should be a conversation from the beginning, specifically thinking about our part in the building an accessible website portion of this project. It is much easier to create an accessible website than it is to go back and change something to be accessible. Of course, though, that's applicable to so many different situations. If accessibility is in the forefront of your mind from the beginning of a project, not only will the accessible portions of that project be done better, it will also just be a lot easier. So we really want to emphasize the fact that these conversations should be happening from the beginning, no matter what the project is, and that these accommodations should be done enthusiastically and done in a way that aids and adds to a project, instead of seeing them as something that you have to do or something that will detract from a project. Because really, in adding accommodations, you're just bringing in a larger audience.
Content organization. So when we were working to design our website, we found it really important to use simple headings and spacing on all of our web pages because some users with cognitive conditions such as ADHD could have difficulties navigating the pages if there's too much content or if it's messy in any way. We also thought this was really important for screen reader extensions because if there's too much on the page, there's too much being read aloud, and then it can be really confusing for the user. So just having simple headings and spacing makes it more accessible, and it looks cleaner and neater for anyone else using the website.
Specifically thinking about headings, which is something that we found surprising and didn't know before starting this project, is that headings are really important for how a screen reader navigates through a web page. So it means that we were using the appropriate heading sizes as well as having a heading level 1, which is really a starting point for a screen reader, which helps the screen reader navigate the page and move through the content in the way that you intend for the reader to move through the content. If you go rogue and go off the rails with your headings, it can cause the screen reader to jump around and can jumble the information that you are trying to present.
Link names. So this is something that is also really important when you're creating PowerPoint presentations or anything else that you're linking students to in your classroom. The link name should be clear, descriptive of their content, and able to be understood out of context. So we gave an example here where it says, try our banana bread recipe versus try it now. The try it now example isn't descriptive of where the link is taking you or what exactly you're talking about, and it can be hard for a screen reader, or it can be hard with someone who has processing issues to figure out where exactly that link is taking you and follow the link appropriately. So this could also be helpful with little kids, if you're in an elementary school classroom, because then they know exactly what they should be clicking on when they are left on their own devices.
Another thing that was really important when we were designing this project was offering alternatives for media consumption. And that means that you're providing things like closed captioning, which is when the auditory pieces of videos are transcribed so that you can read what people are saying while watching a video. Similarly, doing auditory descriptions for videos, which is when the visual pieces of videos are described over using words, and so that you're listening to what is visually happening. So that is really helpful for people who are vision impaired. Closed captioning is obviously helpful for people who are hearing impaired. And then alternative descriptions for pictures, which means that all of the photos on resources are described in words so that a screen reader can tell someone what they are, what is in the photo, so the content in the photo.
So to talk a little bit more about what Claire just described, alternative descriptions for pictures are just the descriptions that explain what's happening in the photo. It's also important to not have any important content in your photo. So this means like not having words or information or any other kind of text on a photo, as long as it's if it's not described somewhere else on the page, because screen readers cannot read text that's on an image. So the same kind of goes for like a PDF file. That's not as accessible for a screen reader. So if you have students who are visually impaired, it can be difficult for them to access their materials if you're using just content that's saved on an image.
This also is super important, and we wanted to think a lot about using color with care. And specifically, that means having a proper contrast ratio at least 4.5 to 1. And that's really important for people who have visual impairments. So that means for us, if you're looking at this slide specifically, we have white text on a dark blue background, and that is high enough contrast to be able to differentiate between the background and the text. If we made the text, for instance, a light blue color, that would be a lot harder to differentiate between the background and the text. And so this is important specifically for text that should be at least 18 point if it's not bold, or at least 14 point if it's bolded, again, for clarity of letters and to be able to differentiate between the background and the text. This also is thinking about not relying on only colors for links or forms, which can be limited or can limit the ability of usage by those who are colorblind. And so that means that if we have a link, we are underlining the link and having a color indicator, or on a form, there is a color indicator and an asterisk, so that people don't need to rely on the color to understand that this portion of the web page is different from just the normal text. And in the bottom corner, we included just a couple images of color combinations that are most non-accessible to those who are colorblind. So green and red is a really popular color combination, but it is extremely inaccessible to those who are most commonly colorblind. Those are two of the colors that a lot of people can't see, as well as what I was talking about before. If we were to put like a darker blue on our background, you wouldn't be able to differentiate as easily.
So now we're just going to show you a little sample of a screen reader reading the text that is currently available on our toneablindeye.com website. So this is just the page that links to all of the monologues that make up the show. So that clip there just showed us the screen reader reading the text that was under the image, which also demonstrated an image description, and also showed how the screen reader moved through the page. So going off of that, it was accessible without a mouse. The screen reader was able to move through the page just as someone would be able to do if they were only using their keyboard to access the page, or anyone that's using it without a mouse. Having websites that are able to be navigated without a mouse are really important, because then they're also more accessible on mobile devices.
So a couple of helpful resources that we used throughout this project that really helped us check our work and make sure that we were moving in the right direction were wave.webam.org, which is a free website that allows you to put in any link, and it gives you notifications on errors, things like contrast, if headings are missing, those types of things, and then also gives you the rationale for why that is important and how you can fix it. So that was really helpful, and that we think is also available through a free Chrome extension. And then the other thing that we used was screen readers, and there are many free Chrome extensions available for this. And that was really important so that we knew exactly how someone who's using a screen reader navigated our website, how they worked, what they were like. Sophie and I had never used one before, so it was really interesting to see how it was. And we changed a lot of things after going through our website with one, because some things were clunky, or if we didn't use the appropriate headers, it wouldn't read correctly. So again, thinking about that video we just watched, it went through the content in the order that we wanted it to, because it followed those heading formatted things that are in a website.
So the main takeaways of how we thought we could use these different skills that we learned in the classroom, and how you can also incorporate them into your own classrooms, are to keep in mind that this is not only for your students, but also for their families or caregivers or whoever's at home with them. If you have a class website, or if you're using online features at home, making sure that it's accessible for everyone in the household, and just following some of the steps that we have indicated before can make it accessible, even if your students don't have visual or hearing impairments or any other impairments that might make this information difficult for them to access. Maybe someone at home does. So keeping that in mind for all of the people who you're interacting with is really important. Another thing was considering this for non-academic events. So if you're having a virtual open house, or even if you're doing a school play or something of that nature, like we demonstrated through our work on the HWS production, taking into consideration the outside community members who might be accessing your materials, and making sure that it's just able to be used by everyone who would like to. Another simple way is describing all images that you use in class presentations. You can do this out loud. There was an audio or a description of the image that we showed by the screen reader. Claire also demonstrated this in the image that was on the slide about color blindness. Just giving a description for anyone who struggles with visuals can make sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone's gaining the same information from an image that you're using in class. Going along with this, providing both written and verbal instructions, just having multiple formats for information can be helpful for students who either have impairments or just are different style learners. It can be helpful for them too. Providing notes or printouts of presentations. We created a whole handout for this, this tech talk, so it's accessible for people who are not able to view it on the digital format. There's a physical handout that might be more accessible to them. And then just there's so many other ways that the concepts that we learn from accessible web design will be incorporated into our own classrooms, and we hope that you can take some of the tips that we shared today and use them in your classroom as well.
Thank you so much for coming to our Tech Talk.
Thank you.